I haven't been sleeping much anymore. My two-room apartment has a window right next to my bed. I've started to notice something odd about the people going by. Have you ever seen how video game characters don't seem to walk? They just glide forward while doing a walking animation, like a reverse moonwalk. That's what they do. They don't tip forward with each step, and they keep their torsos completely straight and legs moving beneath them while drifting past my window. The other thing I find weird about them is that all of them are very, very smartly dressed. All the women wear long Victorian-looking dresses with puffy, usually red or blue short sleeves. The men all wear tuxedos with pants that go very far up their torsos. Some of the older men have short black canes with metal balls on the top. They walk by my window every day, about two per minute. Their timing not changing when the sky goes dark. There's still one thing I can't quite figure out, though. I live on the 16th floor. I'd actually seen him on our way home from school. He looked dirty and disturbed and stared straight at us as our bus went by. We even made jokes about him, probably as our way of pretending we weren't afraid. He was incredibly out of place in our middle-class suburbs, so his mere presence felt threatening. Thus our panic when the three of us got off at our stop and saw him at the corner, about to look in our direction. He was between us and our houses, and the bus had already pulled away, so we bolted for the bushes of a nearby yard. We weren't sure if he had seen us, but we peered through the leaves and saw him stalking our way, muttering randomly. Tim, my neighbor, insisted that he'd seen a large knife in the man's ragged clothing. Danny, a kid I hardly knew, who had just moved into the neighborhood, insisted that he was imagining it, that Tim's glasses must have reflected the sun wrong or something. Still, we were terrified, and the sidewalk was going to bring him right by us. It was Tim that broke and ran first, keeping low. I followed, my heart pounding, as we dove into the darkness underneath the porch of the unfamiliar house we'd been hiding near. As we squeezed our bodies against the dirt, the grimy wood pressed into our backs, barely giving us enough room to breathe. From our hiding place, we could see the disturbed man turn into the yard in front of us and begin searching around, hitting the bushes and muttering angrily. I realized then that Danny wasn't with us, but I hadn't seen where he'd gone. Tim had lost his glasses back in the bushes, and he just huddled in the shadows next to me in near blind terror. We stayed there in silence, waiting. Every so often, whenever I almost thought it was safe to come out, footsteps would creep across the wooden porch above us. Tim almost sneezed once, but I covered his mouth and nose in stark fear. We waited there so long that the tone of the sunlight began to change. We hadn't heard the man searching about in a while, and I was just getting ready to peek out when footsteps clattered and a thud hit the wood directly above us. A split second later, Danny's face appeared in front of us upside down, and he looked at us through the lattice. A look of shock and surprise crossed his features as finally finding us. He whispered something, but I couldn't hear anything. He seemed to be saying, "Come closer," so I figured the horrible man was still around and we had to be quiet, and I inched forward. Danny's features grew fearful, and he kept indicating something above us. Strangely, I still couldn't hear him. His eyes seemed to dim then, and I inched forward a little bit more. I froze for a moment in horror, then backed up. Tim mouthed to me. What did he say? And I just shook my head, completely in shock. Danny hadn't conveyed, "Come closer." He had mimed, "He's up there." The drifter was unknowingly sitting right above us, waiting, because he knew we had to be somewhere in that yard. There was nothing to do but wait in silence, trying not to scream. I was glad Tim had lost his glasses. I lay there as darkness descended, waiting in unwavering terror and trying not to feel the glassy, cold stare of Danny's severed head as it rested in the grass a foot away. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." You blink your eyes and pull up on your elbows. Your clock grows red in the dark. It's 3:23. "Do you want to come in bed and tell me about it?" "No, Daddy." The honest of the situation wakes you up more fully. You can barely make out your daughter's pale form in the darkness of your room. Why not, sweetie? Because in my dream, when I told you about the dream, the thing wearing Mommy's skin sat up. For a moment, you feel paralyzed. You can't take your eyes off your daughter. The covers behind you begin to shift. She made a playful squeal as I tagged her. It was clear she was enjoying herself. She was laughing herself to tears. "Daddy, stop it, my sides hurt." She continued to laugh. Her joy was contagious. I smiled. For once in years, I smiled. I dare say I've smiled more that day than I have in my entire life. Alas, all good things must come to an end. She was tired and fell asleep shortly after. My wife soon came home. She was so glad to see me, she yelled my name, again laughing to tears. She hugged me, still laughing. I continued to smile. She looked down and saw my tagging tool, quickly shooting her focus back to my eyes. I continued to smile. "Michael." Tears continued to stream down her face in excitement. "How could you have done this to our little angel?" She tried to run, but she was too slow. "Tag." I smiled wider. "You're it." A married couple who had just returned from their honeymoon decided to buy a house. The couple was very happy because they managed to get the house at a very cheap price. It was in a nice neighborhood close to the city and just a short walk from a shopping center. One day, the husband was walking down the hall when he spotted a red crayon lying on the floor. The couple didn't have any children, so the husband wondered where the crayon had come from. Perhaps the previous residents left it behind, he said to himself as he casually threw it in the trash. The next day, the husband came home from work to find another red crayon lying in exactly the same spot. He was very puzzled and decided to ask his wife about it. The wife grew pale in the face when he brought it up. She told him that every day since they first moved into the house, she had been finding red crayons when she was cleaning. They were always lying in the same spot, at the end of the hallway. The husband was standing in the hallway wondering about this weird phenomenon, when he began to notice something was not quite right. The hallway was too short. He tapped on the wall at the end of the hallway and heard a hollow sound. Curious, he began peeling off the wallpaper, despite the protests of his wife. Behind the wallpaper, they found a pair of sliding doors. It was as if someone had carefully hidden the entrance to a closet or a small room. The husband discovered that the sliding doors had been nailed shut. He got a hammer from his toolbox and began prying out the nails, one by one. After pulling out the last nail, he slowly opened the sliding door to reveal the small hidden room. Looking inside, they saw that the white walls of the little space were covered with words scribbled in red crayon. Over and over again were the words. "Mommy, I'm sorry, let me out. Mommy, I'm sorry, let me out. Mommy, I'm sorry, let me out." Normally you sleep soundly, but the thunderstorm raging outside is stirring you from your sleep. You begin to doze, then another crash jolts you awake. The cycle lasts most of the night, so you lay there, eyes open and outward, looking at your room stretching out before you in oblong shadows. Your eyes move from nameless object to object until you reach your mirror, sitting adjacent to you across the room. Suddenly a flash of lightning and the mirror flickers in illumination. For a scant second, the mirror reveals to you dozens of faces, silhouettes within its frame, mouths open and eyes blackened. They stare out at you, their black pupils fixed upon your face. Then it is done. Are you sure of what you have seen? Unsettled, you don't sleep for the rest of the evening. The next morning, you remove the mirror from your wall and toss it in the trash. It didn't matter if the vision you had seen was of truth or falsehood. You wanted to be rid of that mirror. In fact, you scrap every mirror in your house. Weeks pass, and the event of that night falls into passive memory. You are spending the day at a friend's house, and it's time to use the bathroom. While you are in there, the faucet starts to run without you prompting it. Taken aback by this, you do not yet act, trying to reason with your paranoia in your mind. The water starts to steam and a skin of moisture covers the mirror. Up above, you're watching intently as your words form. Please return the mirrors. We miss watching you sleep at night.